We're live. Welcome back to Everything EOS, the longest running EOS podcast. Thank you all so much for joining us after a very eventful B1June weekend. Now, I know most of you couldn't be there in person like all of us that you're seeing on camera right now, but fortunately we have the inside scoop, the inside details, what it was like to be there, both at the Everything EOS event and at the official B1June event. So what we're going to do today on this special edition live stream is really unpack everything that happened at B1June. Talk about voice, talk about EOS VM, EOSIO 2, WebAuth, so much news that broke at B1June, talk about the significance of it, and then how it relates to EOS overall. So as you know, we have some familiar faces here. We're joined by Zack Gall, Peter Keay, Evan Schindler, and of course, Mark Woods, who helped us set up that Everything EOS event. So Zack, what do we want to start with?
Well, let's start with, man, you said you were going to be the driver today. I'm still looking at the live stream. It's on more of a delay than usual. So why don't we start with the Friday event? So we got Mark Woods here. Mark Woods was kind of the man behind all of this stuff. It was a very difficult event to plan for, given the fact that we started planning, a month out, but we didn't know how many people Block 1 invited. So at first we thought maybe 50 people, maybe like a little gathering, casual. And then the numbers just kept piling up and piling up and piling up, and we had to keep increasing it. I think, how many RSVPs did we end up finishing it with?
We landed at about 275. And I mean, people started to show up well before 6 when we were still setting up. And then I think by, 8 o'clock, that the roof deck was pretty packed.
Oh, it was amazing. And what I thought was so cool was just, how many different types of people were there. There were people that drove across the country, shout out to you, Rory, just to come to the Everything EOS event, and had a surprise later where they could actually get into B1June that we'll talk about in a little bit. But Brock was there, Crystal was there. They all came in. Mark Wood showing off the Everything EOS wristbands that we had. It was just such a cool event, and so cool that so many community members came from all around the world, some from China, some from San Francisco, some from Central and South America, pretty much every place. People came and showed up. So just such a fun time.
Sorry, I'm kind of in the zone here trying to get everything fixed. The link got jacked up again, so I'm trying to send it out to everyone.
Okay, no worries. Well, why don't we talk about what happened at the event a little bit? It'll start off with the Everything EOS event still. So one highlight of the event was definitely when Brock got up on one of the tables and wanted to make an announcement. And as you guys know, Stella from Pixios has been selling these very cool different EOS underwear patterns. And Brock got up, he put the underwear on over his suit and made this big announcement in front of everybody and sort of gave it away in a very cool fashion. But what was awesome about this is as people started to leave, this was, the event technically ended at 9 p.m., but people were there, several hours after that. There were even still people there when I left closer to midnight. But what was so cool is that a couple of people from Block 1 showed up. Greg Lee showed up, the new head of security at Block 1 came, and a bunch of other developers, people like that. And it was around, I think, 10 p.m. that the chief security guy leaned over and he showed us a message. And this was a message from Brendan Bloomer, the CEO of Block 1, as you all know. And it said, "Oh, I'll be there in 20 minutes. So we were all like, oh, wow, Brendan Bloomer is actually coming to this event. This is so cool. Like, surely this is as good as it gets. Brendan showed up. He had a security guy that sort of stayed at the bottom of the steps. But it was so cool. He took photos with all the different community members. And then what was awesome about this moment was that when Brendan realized, oh, some people actually, drove across the country or took a flight here just to come to this event, the Everything EOS event, but may not have had a ticket to the B1June event, he said, and Mark, if you want to hold up that wristband, he said, oh, if you have one of these Everything EOS wristbands from this event and you're here right now, you will actually be granted access to B1June. So there are people that just came to our event, didn't think they were going to be able to get into B1June, and thanks to the generosity of Brendan Bloomer and Block 1, they were able to get into that event.
Why don't we roll the clip?
Let's pull it up.
I'll get it queued up here. Let's see if we can get it working here.
Yeah, the value of our little tiny wristbands went up exponentially shortly after the announcement you're about to hear.
Yeah, I know. I had a box full of the wristbands, and I heard the announcement.
Megaphone!
Hello, is this better?
Yes.
All right, so I just want we do.
Megaphone!
Hello, is this better?
Yes.
All right, so I just want to say thanks everybody for coming. It means so much.
You can turn it up.
See how far everyone's been traveling. All of you guys make what we do worth it in every way possible. But we just want to say we knew some people here weren't able to get tickets to the conference. We expect that we're going to have some spare seats just due to natural kind of no-show and stuff like that. So if you show your wristbands tomorrow at the event, we'll escort you to a special area where we'll try to get as many of you guys in as possible. And welcome to the very, very beginning of B1June. So have a good night, everyone.
E31 May!
I love at the end, the guy who's shouting E31 May.
So you know what's pretty funny is that was me doing the video and being a little bit over exuberant there at the end.
I love it. That's great. I'm glad you got that in the note there. It was such a fun time. So cool that he showed up. So that was really Friday. That was the big event Friday. A lot of people, got in on Friday. I drove up on Friday. I know a lot of you guys got in on Friday as well. But Saturday, of course, was an eventful day, the day of B1June. And before that, we had planned Scoot 1 June, which is where we all get on these motor scooters, the Birds, the Ubers, the Lyfts, all these things around the city. And we all sort of scooted around to different monuments and then ultimately over to B1June. Do you guys want to talk a little bit about what that's like?
We've got a clip for that. So let's get through all the personal stories. Then we'll dive into the actual analysis of everything. How about that?
Yeah, perfect.
All right. So I got to get this window sized up. Video credit to Rob Benke from Team Nougat here.
We got it, boys! We got it, boys! It's outrageous. You guys got room for one more?
Is that you?
And then we got a Shady Moore video also. It's not showing up to the actual venue. Someone took it from the steps. See Tim Lewis. So basically, we're just a bunch of goons looking ridiculous, but it was just awesome getting the community together. That was the whole point of Friday night's event. That was the whole point of the Scoot 1 June. It was just an excuse to get the community together for more than just the 3 hours of B1June, and it was every bit worth it. We kind of skipped over Friday a little bit, and I thought it was really cool whenever we were hanging out. As you mentioned, like Greg Lee was there, a bunch of other Block 1 people. Eddie Schwartz, the head of cybersecurity with Block 1. Didn't he tell were you the one that was told that Brendan was coming first, like a half hour in advance?
Yeah, he asked me. We started to talk because I saw him come up. He actually reached out to me when he initially RSVP'd. He was the first one from the Block 1. I was like, whoa, like probably 2, 3, 4 weeks ago. So we started to correspond. So I was able to catch up with him, and he was chatting with Brendan for probably about half an hour to an hour, trying to make it happen, I'll say. And then, yeah, there was a big other Block 1 contingent, which was great to see all them there. And they do have to say, they definitely forgot about all of our, well, I got to hide that one. So we got.
That's my favorite one right there.
Yeah.
Get EOS Nairobi. So this shout out to EOS Nairobi. We got
EOS
YOLO.
There we go. Yep. Yeah, we got
YOLO.
Sphere. Yep.
I got my token pocket phone cover.
Oh, nice. Then I
Okay.
got the one, the Pixio. So the shout out to the Pixio store.
Jealous.
Go there and buy that shirt.
Getting into the swags, huh? I don't even know what I'm doing here.
And then,
Too
of
much
course,
stuff.
shout out to the Bonds. It's probably hard to see it all, but the Bonds and Ashoro from the Token Yield for the beer mugs.
All right, so I think people want to hear some analysis from the event, because it seemed like initially after the event, it seemed like there were a lot of people underwhelmed. I wasn't so much underwhelmed as I was that it ended abruptly. I was kind of expecting the keynotes to go longer, and it did end very abruptly. So I will admit that I was surprised by that. And it did actually take a little bit of time for everything to set in. But luckily, myself, Rob, and Pete, the next morning, we got to meet with Brendan and Dan for the podcast. And I hope everyone who listened to the podcast on Sunday got a much clearer idea of what actually transpired on Saturday and the bigger picture of what actually was announced. We worked really hard to get that out on time. As soon as we got out of the interview, we only had 30 minutes with them. That's why it kind of ends abruptly. We packed our 30 minutes with as many questions as we possibly could. As soon as we're done recording the podcast, Rob recorded an intro real quick. We ran to a cafe down the street. We all split up all of the work. I was doing the audio editing because we had like a hand mic we were passing around. So I had to cut out a lot of silence of us passing the mic and a few other things. And then whenever we went to upload the video, the Wi-Fi was like really crappy. So
we
Pete
used the
and I are
Wi-Fi over at the Embassy of Senegal.
Yeah,
which
shout
was
out,
closed.
shout out to the Embassy of Senegal for hooking us up with the Wi-Fi. Because if you have Xfinity Wi-Fi, you can log in to anyone else's Xfinity Wi-Fi as like a guest. So that's what we ended up doing. I'm walking down the street with my laptop, literally looking to get this Wi-Fi connection to an Xfinity, and the Embassy of Senegal had it, and we were right outside the embassy uploading that podcast for everyone. We got it out within about 3 hours of recording it. Which
I
is
wonder
awesome.
if we just got their cybersecurity chief fired.
And Pete almost died before the actual interview. Also,
Yeah, the Embassy of Senegal. Yeah, want to tell that quick story, and we can jump into the other info.
The morning of the interview, and crypto, you live on Telegram, so I'm like chatting with Rob on Telegram about where to go and chatting with EOS people about the events and details and stuff. I'm in a parking garage, and I round this corner, and there's like an unfinished like stone ceiling that's like this tall. Sadly, it's not a couple inches taller. I just barrel right into that thing. And it's like right here, I got a big like bump on my head. And, so I barrel right into it. I'm just dazed for a while, like what the heck happened? And I realized I ran into like a rough rock. My head just starts bleeding because it's rough. It's not like it was because it was hit. It was just really rough. And so I'm like we're supposed to interview Dan Larimer and Brendan Bloomer in like 30 minutes, and my head is dripping blood. So I run to my car, careful of the ceilings, and like I have a towel and I'm wrapping my head. I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna miss it. I'm gonna have to call Zach. I'm gonna have to check for a concussion and stuff. And as it slowed down, I was like, you know what? I'm not even going to tell them about this until after the interview.
Pete comes
I'm just going to barrel through. I'm going to because I was starting to feel all right. Like the pupils were dilating and stuff. So I was like, I'm okay. I'm going to barrel through despite the headache and hit this interview because it's just an opportunity I don't want to pass up.
I thought it was funny because before the iOS wallets and the authenticators all came out last week, Dan made a comment on Telegram saying many devs died bringing you this code. And then Pete almost died trying to bring you this podcast. He ran back up to the hotel room to get me because he still had to come up. He goes straight into the bathroom. I didn't understand.
All the little towels, how you grabbed a towel and you're like, let me wipe my face off. All the rest were bloody.
Oh my God. So basically I'm probably I didn't even check the hotel bill, but I probably got billed for all these towels that Pete bled on.
That's actually probably true. They throw those away.
I'll cover it.
And yeah, so that was the sort of craziness leading up to the interview. But why don't we unpack what actually happened at B1June? So why don't we start off in sort of the order that everything was announced? So I think that first thing was probably Coinbase, right? Coinbase came on stage. Yeah. We had the guys from Balaji from Coinbase Earn. And basically they announced a couple different things, one of which I think sort of slipped by a lot of people. So the first is Coinbase Earn. You go to coinbase.com/earn/EOS and earn $10 of free EOS just by learning about EOS and EOSIO. So it's pretty cool. A good way to sort of get people into the ecosystem, give 1 point something free EOS right now. But a little piece that they slipped in was actually that it's now available on Coinbase custody. So these big institutions that have to custody their assets according to their investment agreements can now buy EOS, these massive institutions, and store it safely with Coinbase custody. So there's actually a clip about this listing and everything as well that I wanted to pull up. Zach, I think you have it queued up, where the gentleman from Coinbase is really explaining the process that they had to go through before they could list EOS and why it's so significant. So let's take a look.
We set in our digital asset framework. So let's take EOS as an example of that process. Behind the scenes of EOS showing up as a tradable asset on our products, Coinbase performs a deep assessment of the security, governance, and scalability of the EOSIO platform. Then our legal, compliance, and market health teams each apply extensive due diligence, and those results get combined using our industry-leading analysis framework. So approving EOS for trading on our flagship product, as with all the assets we support, is the culmination of many hours of analysis and assessment and really reflects on the high quality of this team and its code base.
Coinbase's goal is to build.
So that's the key that I really want to focus on. Not only do they look at the scalability and the governance of the network, but this entire assessment and them listing this not only on the main, Coinbase Pro, then the Coinbase mobile app, but now on Coinbase Custody really reflects the high quality of the Block 1 team and the EOSIO code base. So I thought that was just very cool to get a little insight in that Coinbase process and hear those really positive words about EOS from the Coinbase team.
So there's another thing. I don't know if we talked about it amongst each other before we recorded, but a couple weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago, the new Coinbase debit card came out, and it's not available in the United States, but it is available in the UK and a couple other countries. And they are working really hard to get it available in the United States. It's slowed down because of regulation. A lot of this is because of regulation. And if you've been following Dan and Brendan on Telegram, they'll say so much. But what Coinbase released about a month ago is a debit card. And what it does is it lets you swipe it at any store you want, in any physical store or online. And you're in the back end through your Coinbase account, you're able to tell it which one of your digital assets you want it to basically commit a sell order for whenever you spend money. So if I buy $100 worth of groceries, in the background, it could either take $100 of my Coinbase stablecoin, or if I only have cryptocurrencies, I could tell it to sell EOS and then give it basically to the grocery store as cash. So that's something that was lost on a lot of people. Is this is going to be available in the United States at some point, probably in the next couple of months, as soon as they get their regulation clarity, because Coinbase used to have a card like this that was available in the United States. It was called the Coinbase Shift debit card. And they shut that one down a few weeks before they opened up this new one that was not available in the United States. So that basically opens up a huge opportunity of a fiat off ramp. So we often talk about fiat on ramps, but this is a fiat off ramp where you can actually spend your cryptocurrency. And we'll get into voice in a little bit here, but if you could imagine if you're able to earn voice tokens through the voice platform, and I know there's some gray area in this right now, but eventually you will be able to sell those voice tokens. I don't know when, but you will be able to sell those voice tokens for EOS. EOS is on Coinbase. So basically any user will be able to earn money through the voice platform, swap it for EOS, and then use their EOS through a debit card using a Coinbase debit card. If you're in the UK, you could do that immediately, basically. So I think that was lost on a lot of people.
Oh, definitely. And I think that the custody portion is huge because a lot of people don't realize that, even the whole point of crypto is to really custody your own assets and maintain control of them. That's really why a lot of us got into this space in the first place. But institutions is a totally different game. A lot of them have investment agreements with all of their individual clients that require them to have the assets custodied with some kind of registered custody provider. So now that piece for EOS custody is there with Coinbase Custody, there's a huge amount of money from the institutional side from both crypto funds and non-crypto funds alike that can now flow into that. So that was, I think, the most exciting part of all the Coinbase news. But anybody else have any comments on Coinbase before we move on?
So I will say I was skeptical of Coinbase Earn before. I've watched a few of the things that they've created, but if anyone's actually watched what they have created fit for EOS, I was actually quite impressed by the type of information that they were able to put out there. So the 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, absolutely. I played through the first 2 out of 4 videos, I think it is, and they're both really, really well done. And it's cool. You get verified right there. Boom, you get your $10 worth of free EOS. The next thing I think we should all talk about is EOSIO 2. And this was, a very, very small portion of the presentation time-wise relative to everything else, but I think was probably some of the biggest news just because of the performance updates that it brings. So to sort of put this in perspective, when the very first version of EOSIO came out, if you consider that 1x speed, they were using the binarian engine for WebAssembly. When they switched to Wabbit, it went to a 2x increase, so 2x over the original. Now, if you look at EOSIO 2 and what's called the EOS VM, the EOS virtual machine that they're coming out with, it's actually a 1200% increase over the first version of EOSIO, a 600% increase over the current version that we all have right now. So this is crazy. It's going to allow for more scalability, more transactions, quicker transaction processing times, and so much more. So there's a point in this video that I think Zach has queued up as well around 9:30 where Dan specifically talks about this speed difference.
Designed specifically for blockchain. When we released EOSIO a year ago, we used the binarian engine. 6 months later, we doubled the performance of EOSIO by switching to the Wabbit engine. With EOS VM, we believe we can now execute WebAssembly 12 times faster than when we launched a year ago. And this is important because the single biggest bottleneck for blockchain is the speed with which you can execute smart contracts. EOSVM lowers the costs and can increase the scalability of applications built on EOSIO.
That's good.
It's designed from the ground up for the high demands of blockchain applications, which require.
So you can also see, by the way, if you watch the pre-recorded keynote that they put out to get the news out right away, I highly recommend going back and watching the live keynote now. It's on their YouTube channel. It's on block.one/June1. You can check it out there. It's so much different to have the energy of the crowd. We were all there cheering, and anytime Dan came out or they made an announcement, everybody was just hyped and screaming. So it was very cool. But what do you guys think of this? Especially you, Pete, on the developer side, you make our Everything EOS developer courses. What do you think of this massive performance boost to EOSIO?
Well, this rewrite is really important, not only for the performance boost, but for a lot of other reasons as well. They had to use the old WebAssembly engine, and WebAssembly is not written for EOS. You know, it was already out there. You can compile a bunch of languages into WebAssembly. You run WebAssembly in your browser. So WebAssembly, both the engines they used were not optimized for EOS. They had to actually kind of do some hacky stuff to get it to run, like with resources, you know, EOS resources, security needs, get it to run deterministically, things like that. You couldn't just do those on WASM. You had to do them. And they couldn't just implement that in the compiler, the contract, or people could intercept and like get around all that stuff and like have infinite resources, you know, infinite resource usage. So they had to do some hacks. And now EOS VM, they're building these things into the virtual machine right at the base layer of it. So not only does that allow for massive performance improvements, but it also sets the stage for a lot of things they want to build on top of it, which we got into a little bit the next day. I guess we'll save that for when we talk about our interview with Dan and Brendan.
Yeah. Just to build on that, WebAssembly is meant for, and Dan says this in the podcast we recorded, but WebAssembly is built for traditional web applications, and traditional web applications don't have to be deterministic. They don't have to have a set order. Whereas with a blockchain-based application, everything has to be predictable. Everything has to happen in an order that is predictable, or else it's no longer deterministic. So they basically had to hack away the original WebAssembly to do what they needed to do, which is basically, I guess, what Pete said. I'm trying to, you probably already said, yeah. And
well, unless I mean, you have to always have the code do exactly the same thing, or the other block producers won't verify it and it'll get rejected. You know, so that's a very special feature of blockchain. Now it's base layer in the VM.
One cool thing about this also that I thought was pretty interesting is their goal with EOS VM also is not just to help blockchain developers building on EOS and EOSIO blockchains, but also just to be a general WebAssembly engine. So they think with the improvements that they've made and some of the additions to EOS VM that it could actually be the most used WebAssembly engine out there, which is pretty awesome to think about from like a software company perspective.
Well, you saw this happen with Google Chrome, right? They came out with a much faster JavaScript when they first launched. And it's the same thing here. We might see adoption far beyond EOS of this virtual machine that they've created.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I do want to say, for anybody who has not watched your all's specific, the thing on this Sunday is Dan goes into this in perfect detail. So definitely go watch that. And I think, Pete, correct me if I'm wrong, I remember them saying the 12X, but that was a conservative, the kind of the benchmark. And I think to make it clear for people, and they correct me if I'm wrong again, is that does not necessarily mean 12x more transactions per second, but it's kind of 12x more processing efficiency. Transactions per second may be, and I think it was Saeed that came into a chat and said he was expecting, I think, the 4 to 6x, if I remember correctly.
Wow. Is that right, Pete?
Yeah, it's 6x the last iteration. I don't know what the specs are. I guess I'm sure Mark is right.
Awesome. That's exciting. So any more comments on EOS VM, EOSIO 2, or should we jump into Yubikey?
Yeah, that was the biggest thing, I think.
Well, I just want to say that we made some pretty good predictions up in here. So we predicted the 2. We predicted that was correct. EOSIO 2, which we'll get into in a little bit.
We didn't predict Coinbase. I don't think anybody mentioned that.
No,
yeah, we mentioned it. We mentioned it was added after the fact.
We did predict Yubikey. I predicted Yubikey, but I kind of had a spoiler because we met the Yubikey guy in Sanford. He didn't say they're necessarily doing anything with B1June, but just knowing that they had some guy from Yubikey at a Block 1 event, it just kind of put in the the pieces together there.
And to be fair, there were a ton of things that we predicted or thought might happen that didn't happen.
Oh, of course. Yeah. So we're, yeah, so we're definitely wrong about more than we were right on this.
And as a note on that also, and us speculating on this channel, it was so funny after our interview on Sunday with Dan and Brendan at the very end, Zach made a comment to Dan that was like, don't worry, we'll stop speculating now. And Dan said, I don't believe that for a second. We thought, it was so good. I was like, oh, smart man. So
yeah, he was probably right.
Yeah, it was just a funny moment to sort of see them, not in front of lights and cameras, to be able to talk to them one-on-one. But why don't we jump to Yubikey, talking about B1's new experimental technique. This is at 1408, which I believe Zach has queued up here.
All right.
And Yubikey, if you guys aren't familiar, is basically this hardware key similar to a ledger. It's sort of that additional authentication method that if you have the key, you can get into your account, Gmail, Facebook, whatever it may be. So here we go.
Ready? All right, let me make sure it's queued up good. 1408, okay. Where's my share button?
Here's the Yubikey right here.
Yeah, so Pete's holding it up. Here comes the video.
Part of this authentication handshake is a digital signature. And I'm always getting super excited if somebody takes a technology and uses it for something new. Right? Block One has come up with this really, really innovative experimental new technique, how you can take the signature block from a WebAuthn authentication and use it as a transaction, as a signature for a transaction on the blockchain. I'm really excited to see how their development will continue in the future. And with that, I want to pass it back to Dan.
So that's just a little note, but I always think it's fascinating when you get other people that have these really technical minds, like the guy from Yubikey, talk about how innovative the techniques that Block One are building really are. It just gets me so excited for all of the new things that we'll see come out of that team. So Pete, you were holding up the Yubikey there. You want to hold it up again in front of the camera so people can see? Oh, nice. So these are the Yubikeys we got at the event. Everybody there was very much an Oprah moment. You get a Yubikey, you get a Yubikey. Everybody got a Yubikey for free that was at the event, along with a bunch of other swag that I'm going to unbox on the Cypherglass channel. But Pete, I guess I'd like to hear from you since you're sort of the tech guy. And then Mark, also, I know you were excited about this. What do you think about this, and what does it sort of enable for everybody within the ecosystem?
Come here, cat.
Distraction.
The cats have been fighting half the time over there, so it's been Furball City.
Nice.
You mean about the authentication specifically?
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating. We've seen a lot of third parties trying to do stuff with this, and I'm excited to see where it goes. I don't really have any specific technical comments. I want to wait to see until they release whatever they're going to release. But
awesome.
So
and Mark,
YubiKeys are actually, they're used by every employee in Google has a YubiKey. Almost every government worker who works with anything classified or secure information, they all have a YubiKey. You could think of it in a way like a two-factor authenticator. So a lot of us use Google Authenticator for crypto exchanges, for example. So first you log in with your username and password, and then it asks you for your six-digit code that you usually pull up on your cell phone, and then you just type it in. What YubiKeys are typically used for today is as that second authenticator. So rather than having to use the Google Authenticator, you actually have to have a physical key with you. And the keys they gave us at the event have NFC in them, which means on your phone. So most of us are familiar with the Lynx wallet. So you send something and then you scan your face and then the transaction goes through. What this YubiKey could do is it adds an additional layer. So you have your biometric ID with your face ID, and then you would have to actually tap your YubiKey on the back of your phone. It detects you have a physical YubiKey, and then the transaction can go through. And the other thing I found interesting was that there's a ton of great information from YubiKey and about WebAuthn also, which I wasn't as familiar with leading up to this event. But if you go back and read a lot of Block One's documentation from like January and February, their blog articles, they talk about this passwordless future. And if you go through all of the YubiKey blog articles, they have the same goal. So their goals are aligned. And I would not be surprised for a second if there is more to this YubiKey partnership than what was shown on that stage, because I think it has something to do with Dan's identity solution.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll wait until we get to talking about the voice to get into what I think the identity solution is beyond the KYC at least.
Yeah, to answer a quick question in chat, Mark, I want to hear from you on this also, but LT in chat says, is there going to be an EOS version of the Yubikey? And yes, it's as far as I understand, it's exactly the same as any other Yubikey. It's the NFC version, but it has the EOS logo on it. So the one that was passed out for free at the event, the one that Mark is holding up right here, if you can see, has the EOS logo on it, which is pretty cool. You know, it just brands it as that. Maybe if you have multiple Yubikeys, you can use one for EOS, one for something else. So Mark, I know you were super excited about this. You kind of think this is the biggest news. Why is that?
So, I mean, Zach hit on a whole bunch of it, but for me, you think about the fact that there are millions of people out there who know how to use this right now. That's the biggest thing for me. And so thinking about how the technology can be used today, it can be used just like a Ledger or a Trezor as your one signing the device, or potentially as the multi-sig across any the potential use case. We use it a lot in the clinical research space. So just the fact that people are comfortable with it is huge, because you start to hand out Trezors to people and they have to toggle and press the buttons, where this literally you plug in and you press one thing. You don't have to know anything else besides how to press a button. And if you didn't know how to do that, you know how to now sign a transaction. So personally, I think that's pretty huge. And I think the tie-in to the keeping a bunch of the government information secure is huge, because there's so many opportunities there. I know we speculated a whole bunch about it, but I think that speculation is not unfounded. It didn't happen yet.
Right. And that's one comment that Brandon made as well in our interview on Sunday, was he said, just because it wasn't announced doesn't mean we aren't working on it. And obviously that doesn't apply to all of the speculation, but certain things that they've talked about a lot, like EOS scaling Bitcoin, maybe the Yubikey government partnership, things like that, I think are reasonable things that maybe they are still working on. And Stoic in chat has a good point that says, you know, along your lines, Mark, what is easier, pressing a digital key against the surface or typing in a full password or recovery key? Makes so much more sense to just have a physical device, especially if millions of people already have it. Mr. Sheffield 37, how might Yubikey impact Scatter? It can actually make Scatter more secure. You can imagine if you needed not only your Scatter password to log in, but then also your Yubikey, you could ensure that nobody could get access to your Scatter other than you, since you hold that key.
Yeah, this is another part of like the multi-factor future, right? The principle behind multiple factors is something you know, like a password, something you are, like your face, and something you have, like a Yubikey. And if you need two of those to sign something, then, you know, no one can make a mask of your face and fake out Face ID, or steal your Yubikey and suddenly have access to all your accounts, or somehow, I don't know, watch you type in your password. You have two of those factors. Even if they hack one, you're secure. So I think it's an important part of where we're heading as far as personally taking charge of your security, having secure accounts, where even if somebody attacks you, they have a low likelihood of succeeding.
And I think as multi-authentication, like multi-sigs get easier and easier for the average person to set up their security levels. If you can imagine, you could set your, like maybe you could play games without having all three authenticators. So like Pete said, something you have, you are, and you know. But maybe if you're playing a game or something where your transactions are just a like distributed game, you might only need one of those things, your Face ID. So it would be just like EOS Lynx is today and Token Pocket is today, where you just scan your face. But maybe if you want to transfer a certain amount of EOS out of your account, or voice tokens, for example, maybe over a certain threshold, you have to have all three. So you could set different levels. So you would have to know your password, you'd have to have a biometric, and you'd have to have your hardware key. And what that opens up is that is exactly what a unique identity is. Because if you have all three of those, there is no possible way that a person can say that someone else stole my identity and I didn't do that. I like if today I'm thinking like when you dispute a credit card charge and you could say it wasn't me that did it. Well, if it was a cryptocurrency transaction on a blockchain, there wouldn't be a need for this dispute, because there would be no question, there would be no shadow of a doubt that it was you who did that transaction, because they had all of your authenticators. And I think social is going to be a fourth one. So something you have, something you are, something you know, and then social could be a fourth one. I don't think you're limited to those three, because you could have multiple keys. So I have two keys here. I could set one as my root and keep that somewhere else. Then I could use this as my hardware key, my second one as the one I actually got to use my transactions. But if I ever lose it, I still have my root on my second one. So this is very exciting. And if you look up security just outside of blockchain, like this is huge. A passwordless future is happening on and off of a blockchain. It's just, I think it has a bigger thing to do with Dan's identity than any of us know. And if anyone's wondering about the price point, these are the these are the Yubikey 5s with NFC, and the price point on them is $45. So I'll get into why that's important in a little bit, but just in case anyone that wasn't at the event wants to pick one up, maybe.
Nice. And we've been going about 35 minutes now, so I do want to jump to voice.com, but real quick, want to read a comment from Kyle. Shout out to you, Kyle. He says, I've worked in compliance, AML, anti-money laundering, investigations, and now healthcare. Trust me, the Yubikey thing is the biggest news for traditional and mainstream adoption. So echoing what a lot of us said, that's pretty awesome. Kyle says, maybe I should say corporate world adoption. Hey, it makes a lot of sense. And I think a lot of corporations will be using EOSIO, whether it's a private blockchain, publishing block headers to the mainnet or something else entirely. So why don't we jump into what was probably the most talked about news, even if, a lot of us disagree that it was the biggest news or whatever, voice.com. So it's a social network, but really there are other components to this. It's an ID layer that a lot of people can build on top of. And that's a point that a lot of people miss. So I guess going to you guys, what did you all think about the whole voice.com announcement and presentation?
So I think it's interesting because it's not, people were expecting UBI or URI and they think we didn't get it, but we did. Like they didn't say it on stage. They didn't say the words UBI. Those words never came out of their mouths, but it is. Every unique user on voice is going to get the exact same amount of voice tokens on a daily basis. So that is what a UBI is, where it's not an income where you're going to be able to live off of it. It might be like a couple pennies a day for each person, but it's giving you something of value, and it's exactly what we were all expecting. It's a social media platform where the advertising revenue is distributed to all of the users on the platform. And we don't know all of the details yet, but if I had to guess, there's probably a specific amount of voice tokens that are going to be distributed to all unique users equally every day. So what I think is going to happen is that's going to reward early adopters, because if there's 1,000 tokens being distributed every day and there's only 100 users, that means every user is going to get 10 tokens. But eventually there's going to be 1,000 users. And when there's 1,000 users, every user is only going to get 1 token each. Now, the numbers are going to be much, much higher than that. But if you can imagine, the early adopters are all going to be rewarded. But the issue right now is distributing a token in countries where there's not regulational clarity. And that just so happens to be the United States. So that's one of the things we're waiting for more information on.
We've actually gotten some more information on that, thanks to Dan and Brendan in Telegram. And one of the things that I proposed, and I saw a lot of other people propose as well, was, hey, we can still use the voice platform as US residents. And initially it was, oh, you can't accrue the token at all. But what a lot of people proposed was, oh, what if you could just within the actual voice token contract blacklist users that are from the USA and other prohibited jurisdictions, still allow them to accrue voice tokens, still allow them to use the voice tokens for the utility, which is to boost or promote posts on the platform, but just not allow them to transfer them to other people or transfer them out to exchanges. And Brendan said, yes, that is possible. So whether they do that or not is sort of remains to be seen, but he did say it is possible. So I would imagine they would go ahead and do that so that US people can start accruing those tokens as well, just not get any of the value out of it, which is where the SEC gets involved and gets a little sticky. But
the most amazing thing was, I don't think Brendan or Dan have slept since the B1June. I think they've been in the Telegram the entire time answering questions. So they're good for them.
Oh, absolutely. It's been awesome to see them clarify so many different things, from like the legal jurisdiction stuff to is voice a bigger platform? And that's a point that I really want to talk about. We know that voice.com is the social media network. It's much, much bigger than a Steam 2.0, but essentially a similar concept where it incentivizes you to post good content, to engage with all these other real people, and upvote the content that you think is good. But what's crazy about this is that if you think about that ID system, and Dan even called this, or Brendan, I guess, in one of his posts that he pinned on Twitter, called this the application layer of EOS. So if you imagine, if we call it the voice ID, we don't know what it'll actually be called, but imagine this identity layer is called voice ID. It's this sort of second layer on top of EOS where you know, okay, all of these accounts are verified as unique individuals. That doesn't mean that when you sign up for a service with Voice ID that you necessarily have to tell that service who you are. Dan mentioned there could be private bridges where you could sort of verify you're a unique individual, but not actually have to reveal all of your details to that service and trust.
I have that. Sorry, I have that clip up actually. Let's play it.
Okay, well, hold on. I want to just wrap up this thought, which is that if we think about voice.com, the social network, in the context of this Voice ID layer, voice.com is really just one use case of this Voice ID layer. And there are going to be all kinds of other apps, some from Block One, a lot from the community that are building and utilizing this unique identity layer. So why don't we go ahead and pull up the clip?
It's important to note too, while we do that, it's not just one unique person. It could be one unique company also.
Yeah. And that I was excited about because I didn't know, oh, it's a bunch of real people. Are we going to be able to have an Everything EOS channel? And we learned, okay, you can post in any form. You can post video. That'll be great for us. But we'll also be able to verify our own page. They'll know that, Zach, Pete, and I are the people behind it, but we won't have to sort of opt out of having a business page. We will be able to have a business page, which is great. So Zach, you want to go ahead and share your screen and pull up that clip?
Yep.
So this is from our interview.
The things that keeps coming up with respect to identity is not everybody wants their identity to be out there. But you don't need every application to solve every problem. Voice is solving a set of problems where people actually want to be identified. But there are possibilities to create other solutions in the future that can leverage it or provide anonymous bridges so you can have a uniqueness without having to reveal exactly who you are. These are all tools that the community can build on top of a foundation of strongly identified users. And just because your initial account's identified doesn't mean that everything you do has to be identified. It's just another option in the mix to really enhance the EOS blockchain and all the other blockchains that decide to integrate with EOS because of voice.
One of the really interesting things here is the implications for governance, right? We have provable identity now, unique identity for voting, but according to what Dan said, it seems like we can also have anonymous voting, which might be important in some cases, right? Where you can have a vote where you see what this group of people thinks and it's provable cryptographically somehow that each vote is from a unique identity, but you can't link the votes to the voter. I think that's fascinating.
Is a great example.
Yeah, I think that opens up a lot of governance possibilities. And
definitely.
We're just starting to think about the possibilities here of an identity layer.
Oh, absolutely. It was either Dan or Brendan mentioning some kind of a hybrid governance model where I believe this was in our interview that we did with them. You guys can check out the link, Zach, if you want to post it in the live chat there, or just go to Everything EOS. But essentially saying something along the lines of you could have a hybrid governance model where, right now it really is the rich that are ruling. The people that have the most EOS tokens decide which block producers get in and which don't. But if you had a hybrid system where it still respected token weighted voting, still gave the rich their power, but at the same time respected the popular vote, which was these unique individuals, you could have a very cool hybrid system that could sort of get rid of cartels once and for all. So I'm super excited about that and the possibilities as it all rolls.
So governance is so new, like blockchain governance, like there's not a whole lot of history to work off of here. So we're all still learning as we go. So if you look at traditional government, they all have multiple branches. So in the United States, we have an executive branch, we have like the congressional branch, we have the judicial branch, and they all kind of do different things. So if you could imagine right now, everything's token weighted. 100% of the block producer vote is token weighted. So in the future, we could always put a referendum in, see what people think of maybe 50% of the block producer vote is weighted based on stake weight. And then the other 50% is based on like one person, one vote potentially. So there's all kinds of different things we could try. And maybe we'll probably most definitely try them on a lot of these sister chains first, in addition to all of these upgrades too. So I just want to put out another complaint there was that we didn't have a live product that shipped at B1June. And a big reason that wasn't possible is because the mainnet still has to implement EOSIO 1.8 before we could launch voice. So that's a huge piece to this puzzle. And the biggest innovation on EOSIO 1.8 is that it allows the dapp to provide system resources for the users. So until we get that, which I think I saw Saeed and some other people say it might be at least 2 months till we do that. Does anyone have more information.
That's about right. The problem is that it requires a coordinated effort among all the block producers to basically do a hard fork, but not one that will be contentious. Everybody agrees we need to move to 1.8 and make all this stuff possible. But it requires replaying basically the entire chain in a new way, which is an incredibly time-consuming process. A lot of people don't even believe how long this stuff takes. But the BPs are all working on it. They've been actively testing it for weeks now. So we're hoping to get it up and implement it on the mainnet as soon as possible. Obviously, Cypherglass not in the top 21. We don't really have control over it at the moment. It's really up to the top 21 right now to implement this as quickly as possible. But I do know that I believe it was Brendan made a comment about it basically being ready to go. So they're ready to deploy this, ready to get the beta in people's hands. And he even mentioned they already have tens of thousands of signups from people trying to join the beta. So it seems like it's going pretty well so far.
So what I think we might see is the beta might launch on like its own chain, like a testnet or a sister chain, because then it could already have 1.8, because we're going to see 1.8 on Kylan or Jungle well before we see it on the mainnet. And exactly. I think that's where we're going to see it.
I think you're probably right.
Because they did say that the beta, the tokens will not be transferring over to the live app. So
exactly.
That's a definite possibility.
I do want to answer a question that
too, I think.
I do want to answer a question that somebody had in chat. Rad Vladdy says, I would prefer a more open, uncensorable network. What is Voice approach on censorship? And Block1's made it clear since then, it's not in our interview and it wasn't mentioned at the event, that Voice will have to comply with local laws and remove illegal content based on jurisdiction. But anyone is free to mirror voice.com and have an uncensorable version. And that's technically possible. So that's something we might see. But yeah, they're going to have to remove illegal content, at least in every jurisdiction. Now, I think right now the feeling is that they're banking on everyone's identity being open to kind of restrict a lot of the maybe hateful or, insightful content that we might see on some other social networks, things like that. I guess time will tell whether that strategy works as far as, revealing people's identity and kind of making them behave more appropriately by doing that.
Well, and I think that's a key differentiation there, right? Like illegal content, if somebody's uploading something like child porn or something, you should obviously remove that. But, hate speech and all this stuff is not illegal, at least not in the US where we still have freedom of speech. So my hope with voice.com is that they won't delete those posts. My personal opinion with all of this is, don't delete any content, honestly, unless it's something horrific like we just described, that illegal content. But if somebody just has an opinion that you disagree with, unfollow that person, go look somewhere else. It shouldn't be required that the platform remove them because they have opinion that somebody else doesn't like we're seeing on Twitter and Facebook and these other platforms today.
I want to pull up something that Brendan said. So Brent, like you said, Brendan and Dan have not slept. And someone in the channel said, like, we need influencers. Like we did ask a question, Rob, I believe you asked Brendan and Dan, what's their onboarding strategy? And they're keeping those cards close to their chest. They did not answer that question. So there's a lot more to it than we already know. And Brendan gave some insight into one piece of that. So someone in the chat, I don't feel like scrolling through it to see their name. They said we need big influencers. And who are those influencers going to be? Well, if you look at the screen, Brendan says, I agree with everything said here and our plan to incorporate this, but June 1st wasn't a time to communicate to the masses. It was the beginning of our onboarding our own community who understand the power of tokenization. Social media is controlled by influencers and they will make serious sums by joining Voice. We have an ad budget in the hundreds of millions of dollars.
Oh my God.
And structured plan to onboard influencers. And that's outside of the value of the tokens.
Woo, that's nuts. I mean, I did notice them saying like some influencers could make millions of dollars or $1 million+ a month just by moving to Voice, which seems like incentive enough, but hundreds of millions of dollars in an ad budget. I mean, they could have Taylor Swift saying on a commercial at the Super Bowl saying, you have a voice, come share your voice. Boom, here's Taylor Swift telling her, 100 million followers to come join Voice. So I think onboarding might be the easiest part of this whole strategy for them once they get this thing up and running and hopefully get some regulatory clarity. But remember, again, even if, and obviously we know USA users will still be able to use Voice and hopefully accrue those tokens, but even if we weren't, the US is only something like 4% of the entire world's population. There's a massive market outside of this that could still make voice.com and the residual impact on EOS very successful. And Go ahead, Mark.
Oh, I was just saying, it's just they're really interesting because when you look back at what the presentation of the voice was during B1June, it basically was something that could be put onto the commercial. It wasn't overly involved, but it was very hard hitting and pretty quick, which is why a lot of people were like, wow, that went by pretty quick. But I think it could translate almost directly into a big commercial. And I hate to speculate now, but I think a Super Bowl commercial would just be it'd be just perfect.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if they have an ad budget in the hundreds of millions, I could see, paying $1 million for a 30-second ad doesn't seem that crazy. No. And one of or I guess two of the biggest things that I think people also sort of missed from the voice.com announcement is that leading up to it, a lot of people were speculating that B1 was going to launch their entirely own chain, that it would connect with the EOS mainnet in some way, but that voice.com would not be built on the mainnet. And what we figured out at the event that was so exciting, at least to me, I'm very, very pro mainnet, is that Block One is building voice.com on the EOS mainnet, not on some side chain, not on some private thing. They're building it on the EOS mainnet and really showing the power of EOS. And as they call it, the EOS public blockchain, which is the EOS mainnet, is where they're going to be building this. And every single one of the people that are onboarded, when Taylor Swift makes an endorsement and 50 million people sign up, each one of those people are going to get a free EOS account that then they can use on all of these other dApps and services that exist on EOS today. So it's going to be, what this could do for the entire EOS community and ecosystem is just mind-blowing to think about when you start getting millions and millions of people onboarded with free EOS accounts.
Well, I think that's spot on, because people have been giving Block One a hard time about how are you going to kind of push the mainnet, and this is how they're doing it. This is the value, or the tokens are resources on the network. If there's real people using it, either B1's going to be paying for the resources and then potentially using the Rex if there are 100 million users, and then that's all coming back to all of us. So
yeah, that's why if you're not already staked to Rex, highly recommend getting out there and staking to Rex if you don't mind locking your tokens up for a little bit, because when they start generating all these accounts, maybe they have to buy more RAM in the future. It's just going to be nuts, and it's so good for the EOS mainnet. It's amazing that Block One is building on the mainnet, so I'm just super excited about that.
Let me ask you this: so with Rex, Rex is a resource exchange, right? What is the resource on Rex? What resource are you buying and selling on Rex?
EOS tokens, CPU net.
CPU. Okay. What is the resource on voice tokens? The resource is attention. Some people might not want to use their attention. So what I think we're going to see is something that's the exact same as the Rex, but it's going to be with your unused voice. So whatever your date, it would be, this will be a resource exchange where the actual advertisers go to buy their attention. So I think there's going to be a way that if you're just a regular person, you don't need to give special voice to anybody, or you could give a part of your voice. You'll probably be able to use your daily UBI and contribute it into this Rex-like exchange. And that's going to be where there's just going to be millions of tokens pulled together. And that's going to be where the advertisers buy their tokens from. And that's going to be how we're going to set a market value on what the voice tokens are.
I think you can do that even just on decentralized exchanges and centralized exchanges.
You can do it with Bancor right now. Yeah. So regardless, the voice tokens will have a price associated with them. And eventually you'll have an amount of whatever currency you want to denominate in. USD equivalent, you'll know roughly based on how many voice tokens you're getting a day, you'll know roughly how many USD you'll get. And it probably won't be more than $1. It'll probably be in the pennies. But if you think about that, so we're also, people forget, everyone is bummed. A lot of people are bummed out by the news, but yet Block One still bought $25 million of RAM. They are planning to put that to work and give free accounts to a lot of new users. The first several million new users are probably going to get free accounts. And then after that, I could see a way where you could get something for free by basically it would almost be like a loan on your daily allotment of voice tokens. So an EOS account costs like $3 today. So if you could imagine, it would let you sign up for voice for free, but then you wouldn't receive any voice tokens until after it pays for itself for the RAM it required. So it'd take $3 of accumulated voice tokens being sold every day from your UBI, and then your account is yours to own. I could also see there being a way where all new users are going to get a Yubikey. And that's one of the things that I wanted to say earlier is I think there's more to this Yubikey. I could see either Block One sponsoring a few million Yubikeys, or I could see a way that these are going to pay for themselves through the daily voice token contributions. I think there's more to these hardware keys than anyone can imagine today.
And going off of
Dan was right.
What?
You just can't stop speculating, can you?
Yeah, it's true. He's a smart guy. Somebody's talking about, they're agreeing with you. They were predicting a voice version of Rex. But Willie T says, how does Block One make money, though? Surely they'll be the only one able to sell to companies. Right now, it seems like anybody will be able to sell these tokens to anybody, assuming you're not in a prohibited jurisdiction. But it's unclear how Block One is going to monetize this, if they're going to monetize it at all. Maybe the goal is to just show people you can build on mainnet and the inherent appreciation of EOS tokens through that. That's how they'll get their money. Or my theory is that anytime you voice it and promote your post to the top, they will take a little cut of that. Since when you're voiced, you get a little extra.
Brendan clarified that today. It's a tiny, yeah, I don't think the amount is set yet. And what I'm going to assume is it'll probably be a votable governance issue, probably maybe one person, one vote. I don't know what the governance model is going to be on voice, but I'm sure if Block One is the core development team, that they'll probably make a recommendation, and then the community will have some sort of way to vote on it and say, yeah, they deserve this much money. I thought another interesting part, I don't know if it's mentioned in the podcast or if it's mentioned at the event, but the voice team is, so basically Block One has all of these different teams working in parallel on different stuff. And the voice team is its own team. Like they're working outside of the EOSIO, like system-wide upgrades. They're working separate from everything else. They're working separate from the wallet, separate from everything. There's a voice team. And I don't know if they're located in Blacksburg, Hong Kong, Los Angeles. They're in Blacksburg.
Yeah.
We got a $20 super chat from Maurice, who says, what I see possible with identity-powered browsing is that owners of websites will be able to audit the viewers of their sites and reach out to them independently, like Dmail, voice, et cetera, to increase the efficiency of sales. But I think there are so many applications. That's definitely one. Absolutely, Maurice. And thank you for the $20 super chat. We really do appreciate it. And thank you to the 200 people watching right now live on this channel. But it's kind of amazing. And Zach brought up a bunch of different use cases in our interview with Dan on Sunday, talking about, unique coupons that can only be used once, an Airbnb service. And it got us on the topic of identity verification and what makes that layer so powerful. And that's the cost. Right now, and this is something from Dan, he said it costs any service, whether it's an Airbnb or an Uber, all these services that have to do KYC, cost them about $4 to KYC one person once. So with this EOS, voice ID, you can pay a similar amount, verify that that person is a unique individual. But then the key is that now that you have them verified and associated with a public key, they can go to all these other services that require KYC and use them for free without the companies having to pay that $4 every single time. So this could actually be an identification, a KYC system that a ton of companies start to use, because now it's actually cheaper than the stuff that exists out there today. So that is super exciting. And thank you again, Maurice, for that $20 super chat.
Yeah, I was going to say, or pay Big Block One $1 instead of the $4 or $5 these big companies are paying.
Right.
Whatever else it is.
Yeah, it could. I mean, maybe that is how they're going to monetize this, is by leasing out the voice ID to people. Evan, go ahead.
That's okay. You guys hit the nail on the head with that, being that we're doing development work, based on EOS with a couple different companies. And one of the onboarding issues and hurdles that they have to get over is that KYC issue and having to pay for it. So if this can be extrapolated across to different dapps and they can solve the identity issue with the voice token or with the voice platform, and then, like I said, move that over to other platforms, it's just going to make it easier for other dapps to move into the EOS ecosystem.
Absolutely. And now we have this identity layer on the EOS mainnet. It doesn't have to be on a separate chain with a bunch of controversy. It's on the EOS mainnet. It's from Block One, and that I think is pretty awesome. So there's, go ahead.
So Dan said, so there were a lot of questions that came out after this, because not every, like Dan said in our podcast, not everyone wants to be identified. And I think the reason the KYC is required, it's been said over and over again, it's because of regulation, it's because of the token. Long term, if you had to ask Dan or Brendan in confidence and they had a vision for 10 years from now, 5 years from now, I don't think KYC is meant to be the long-term requirement. I talked about this on a previous podcast. Once you initiate millions of users, you could build a web of trust where you basically have to be invited in by someone else. And even while it's a KYC, it's been clarified in Twitter or the Telegram, there is probably going to be a referral program. So you're probably going to be able to monetize yourself by inviting your friends onto this platform. So that's going to be one way we get users. And another way is, like we said, influencers. So I had to look it up because I forgot what it's called. Tidal. So it's like a music streaming service by Jay-Z. If you're a fan of Jay-Z and you want to listen to Jay-Z music, you have to use his streaming service. Do you know how many people he moved over millions of users to his streaming service from Pandora, from Apple streaming? And I think a few years ago, didn't Taylor Swift do the same thing? She was exclusive to Apple Music or something. You couldn't get it on.
She chose not to go on Spotify because of the payment issues.
That was a really good strategic PR stunt that they put together.
So if I had to guess who they're really gunning for, it would be Donald Trump. Imagine if Donald Trump would only tweet on voice. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but
the king of speculation.
Wow. I'm not saying, but if you had to ask them, let me ask you guys, would you like Donald Trump to only use voice? The answer is yes. I'm sure the answer is
absolutely.
One.
I mean, it aligns very well with what he's, the criticisms he has had specifically about Facebook and Twitter, historically sort of removing conservative content, which obviously Donald Trump aligns with. So to have a network where he knows there aren't a bunch of bots and trolls coming at him that are anonymous, paid by these other people, it seems like something that he would definitely like. So maybe that aspect, giving him voice.com, will be kind of a trade, like, oh, hey, we'll trade you this new platform where, all of the censorship doesn't happen. And in exchange, you give us some regulatory certainty, and we'll give you the platform to speak. So I'm hoping something like that happens. As we know, Brendan had lunch at the White House.
And another thing Dan said, he clarified, was he knows that not everyone wants to be identified. But he said something in Telegram. I don't know his exact words, but he said one of the things he's thought about is maybe if you have a certain threshold of voice tokens staked, that could kind of take the place to allow you to use the platform without the unique ID. So you'd have like a secondary account, but you have to put a bunch of tokens at stake, almost like bonding yourself to and you wouldn't get to UBIs and things like that. So they have that. And then I think does anyone remember what else he said about how every one unique ID could have like one pseudo anonymous account, where maybe block one in the government might be able to know who that person is, but publicly no one would know who that was. Did anyone?
Exactly. Yeah, so you could still essentially have like an anonymous account on voice, but they would know on the back end, okay, you are a unique individual. You don't have 100 anonymous accounts all, with bot activity.
Yeah, basically like a parent-child, that kind of.
So what do you guys think? So Dan, leading up to the event, said he had to retract some of his emojis and reel back expectations a little bit. What would you guys say was this the news or announcements that weren't delivered?
I think the rocket ship moon emoji.
So they didn't.
He had to pull that one off.
They didn't mention the Washington D.C. office, and I don't know why, because it's hidden in plain sight. They're hiring like crazy, a bunch of governance employees, a bunch of cybersecurity experts, and at the EE31 May event, Eddie Schwartz said, do you know anyone that's like a genius in security? Like, they want the best in the world, security, cybersecurity experts working for them. And they all seem to be getting hired in the Washington, D.C. office. And Yubikey has some Washington, D.C. offices also. Just want to throw that out there. But what do you think they held back on? Why do you think they held back on saying anything about the Northern Virginia office?
So I think...
go ahead.
So to me is, I know that they were between a handful of locations in Northern Virginia. I think they've landed on one, but I don't think it's official yet. And those kind of things can impact real estate prices, other stuff like that. So you don't want to jump the gun and announce something before it's actually going to happen. So it's definitely happening. I don't think they actually have the location yet.
That makes sense. There are dozens of job posts for that Northern Virginia location, which seems like the DC one. So it's super exciting. And we saw Brendan on stage with that guy a while ago talking about they're coming to DC. So I agree, Mark. I think it's pretty much confirmed. It's just a matter of time. Mark Stare in the chat says, oh, well, we're going to the same thing. Was this P or layer 2? I think this was V for voice. Mm-hmm. Could have been the two people from Coinbase that came up. Could have been Yubikey for a second layer of authentication. I mean, you could probably apply it retroactively to anything.
Yeah, Rob and Zach, we had a couple people post on our one Twitter picture when we were at the event, when we were giving the peace sign. They were like, well, you got to be careful because it means there's something not so nice in a bunch of other countries. So we got to do the other way around.
Well, it's just it's uncomfortable to do it like this. This is more
Exactly.
if you're across the chest, it's hard to do it like that. We apologize. Apparently, in the UK especially, which a lot of our audience is from the UK, it's the US, Canada, UK, and Australia are 4 biggest countries. That apparently is equivalent to the middle finger. So sorry, everyone in the UK.
I really don't think that's true, because when I was at the SVK crypto offices, I mean, I'm doing this and all the photos and nobody mentioned anything. So either they're like, wow, he really, hates us, or not a real thing.
Well,
So
it is definitely true. It's just not as widely, I would say, used anymore.
I was trying to verify that apparently in some places in the Middle East, this is also a middle finger. So it's not like we're going to stop giving thumbs up. Yeah, sorry for all the Middle Eastern fans out there. I didn't mean to flip you the bird.
But to me, I think the other one that was probably a retracted emoji was the UBI one. And I think, voice, as we said, has UBI, but we didn't get UBI quite yet. So that could be something that was retracted for right now, at least.
I think in Telegram, I believe Dan even mentioned that the voice tokens you get daily are kind of like UBI, but I would bet that they don't want to refer to it as that, because when you call something income, universal basic income, there are all these tax implications and legal implications on top of it. So it may be a legal thing as well.
So this is kind of unrelated, but speaking of UBI, there is the first presidential debate late January, and there's going to be a lot more people talking about UBI, because Andrew Yang, I don't know what the minimum threshold is for pool support, like 2%, something like that. He reached the minimum threshold to be on the presidential election debate that's going to be nationally televised with all of the candidates on it. Andrew Yang's going to be on that panel, and it's going to be the first time that a lot of American citizens are going to hear about UBI for the first time. And I'm looking forward to that. So that's completely outside of what we're doing. But I think it will be more talked about. And I have something that Dan said on whenever we're talking about what we didn't get at the event that we were expecting. So on November 12th, 2018, Dan said this: we have people working on Rex, DEX, security, wallet, design, social, hard forks, faster database all the time. What's the one thing we didn't get on that list? We got Rex, where they're always working the DEX. This leads me to believe that they have a DEX in the works. Maybe it's Bancor, maybe it's something of their own. But out of everything he said they're working on, we're getting the hard forks with 1.8. The design is probably like the iOS stuff we saw with the wallet. But he said they're working on a DEX. They've been working on a DEX. He's been talking about BitShares 3.0. So if I had to guess, I think there's a component to it that requires some very, very clear regulation on before they can release it, or before they open source it to the community to do something with it. But I thought of that also because I knew whenever he was retracting his emojis, I was trying to figure out what it was. And out of everything he talked about, the Washington DC office wasn't mentioned. So whatever those emojis were that I thought was world headquarters in the US. And then he mentioned the DEX a while back also. So we didn't see either of those.
By the way, guys, I don't know if you knew this, but Apple Store just approved EOS Lao Mao's release of the EOS Authenticator app. So the Authenticator app, a version of it, at least, of Block One's code, is just popped up. Some exciting news that probably shouldn't wait till next time.
Yeah, well, and remember, guys, do not use significant amounts of funds with the EOS Authenticator app yet. It's still very early stages. It's still, I guess you can call it beta.
It's all testnet. We don't have 1.8 on the mainnet yet, so you can't really.
Oh, okay. You can't do it anyway.
It's all faucet tokens.
So is there anything else we should cover? There's one post I want to pull up from PIOS that I promised the people I would talk about. I know we were talking about privacy bridges. A lot of people like privacy. Is there anything?
One more thing, Rob. Yeah. So the one thing, just again, I mean, we really support B1. The one piece of critical feedback that I would give is I was really hoping that they would present their strategic plan or their roadmap. They really didn't present it at all. And I that was the one thing I thought was really missing, but they have the new B1 strategic, the vision, I think it's called, the roadmap, and it is the massive. So if you go on their site now, they sent a few people over there, and people don't realize you can actually drill into a whole bunch of the pieces of information that they have there, kind of like an accordion. So go check it out. There's a lot of very interesting information on the strategic vision page. But I will say, I wish they would have spent 10, 20 minutes just talking about it.
I just posted the link in the chat, so check it out if you want to see what we're talking about.
I think we're all expecting even more clear. So I like the strategic vision, but to me it reads a lot like a mission statement. And there were a lot of Block One employees at the event that agreed with this. One of the things stifling innovation on the EOS mainnet is nobody wants to compete with Block One. So we all knew there was a Block One wallet in the works since I think the London event back in October. So there are a lot of teams that just held off on ever working on a mobile wallet because they didn't want to compete with Block One. Without knowing what Block One's doing, people are basically sitting on their hands waiting to hear more from Block One. There were so many releases that we're going to see in June from independent companies because they wanted to wait to see what Block One was doing first before releasing their updates. And I still think we need more clarity on what they're doing. And I think they're not able to show all of their cards because for strategic reasons. But I think it would be nice to know what they're not working on. If they can't tell us what they are working on, we need to at least know what they're not working on.
I mean, the list, let's be realistic, though. The list of things they're not working on is a million things.
Of course.
A number of things. I think I would like to see like some kind of a roadmap that maybe says like, oh, this thing is coming out then. But on the same time, I understand there's a flip side where people are, waiting not to launch something, but there are also people waiting to copy something that Block One is doing and try to rush it out first. So I think it's sort of a balance that these people have to maintain.
I agree, but it was definitely made clear by a lot of employees that the wallet was planned to be a Block One product. It was 100% planned to be a product. And they decided against it because they didn't want to compete with the community. And I thought that was a good decision.
Oh, definitely. And I think they're very cognizant of that. I mean, now that we know, sort of the big things that came out, we know it's social media. I obviously wouldn't recommend anybody build a social media app. I mean, you can if you want, but I don't know that I would want to compete with Block One. But I think it's safe to build pretty much anything else, as long as you're not building Bitcoin layer 2 scaling or something, especially since it might be a while until the next B1 announcement.
I mean, I still think until we see Dan said we're going to be publishing a blog soon with more clarity around voice. I still believe that it's going to be some sort of protocol where you could actually build a competing social media platform using like the same backend, similar, kind of how busy.org and Steemit both coexist. I don't know how it's going to work, but I don't think they're going to try to corner the market here with some sort of monopoly. I think there will be some standardizations and things that we'll see, but I mean, I don't have any information yet. They also said there's a white paper, but they're not going to release it until they're ready for strategic reasons. So kind of stick, but I want more. I want more.
Oh, definitely. I think we all do. So I'll jump into this piece of news here that we have. This is just very quick. I'm going to get a video on this as well. I haven't gotten it yet, but Mel from EOS, shout out to you, Mel, if you're watching, said that she would send me a video to share with you all as well. But the design of the actual EOS wallet, some of the design challenges that they went through, and sort of their onboarding strategy for making anonymizing your transactions and your EOS tokens on EOS as easy as possible is out now. So I just wanted to show this post to you all. I promised the community I would. So I'll drop a link to this in the chat as well. But very, very exciting. And now the actual wallet release should be coming out in the near future. So lots of good things happening here on the privacy front. We got anonymous bridges from Dan to sort of use your identity without actually revealing who you are. And now with EOS, private and untraceable transactions. So I'll drop the link.
Rob, how about some non-speculation about Apple and that they released their crypto kit? Yep, the crypto kit.
Yeah. So Apple had a big day, and I watched their whole presentation yesterday on Monday. I didn't know what was happening, and then I saw it on my Apple live stream on Apple TV. But they released a lot of privacy-focused stuff, but then also crypto-focused, which was Crypto Kit. So sort of similar to Samsung, where they released this recent thing on the Galaxy S10s, where you can store private keys in the enclave. Apple is now releasing an actual framework called Crypto Kit to allow developers to interface with the secure enclave on everybody's device. So they're going to sort of open it up to everybody. And it's very cool to see these huge, huge companies embracing crypto, embracing cryptography for other things other than blockchains. And it's awesome. A more private, more secure future.
I think we forgot to actually describe what the voice token does, Rob. You want to, with the comments, kind of out commenting each other, want to explain that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the voice token, and they said this is only one use case of the voice token. So we don't know what the other use cases are, but one way to use it is to promote a post or voice it. So for example, if I see that Zach puts out a good blog post and I really like what he's saying and I want to leave a comment, I can comment on that post and anybody can see it. But then if, say 200 other people come in and are posting comments and I really want to have my voice be heard, I can voice my post, pay a certain amount of tokens, and I will then be the top post in the comments there. And I will actually also do a favor to Zach by sort of promoting his post as well, since I voiced, my comment on his post. But then what's really interesting about this that sort of has some pixel master elements to it that Dan was such a huge fan of, is that if somebody else comes in and voices it after you, your post will now no longer be a promoted post, but you'll actually get back all of the tokens that you put out to voice it, plus a few extra. So there's sort of this like speculative element to it where, ooh, I'm going to go and voice my opinion on this post so that then when somebody outvoices me, I'll make a little bit of extra tokens. So it's kind of cool to see how the game theory there will play out.
You also get voice, according to the screenshots they've shown in the demos, you get voice tokens for getting post likes.
Yeah.
I don't know if that applies to comments, but if it does, then if you promote your comment and other people like it, you get some back. So you're incentivized to promote good content, not just promote spam content.
That's not being talked about enough. There's voicing something, and that's equivalent to doing like a almost similar to doing like a paid ad on Facebook or Twitter. But there's also likes. So as I understand it, voice has an inflationary mechanism, just like Steam, where the likes are distributed equal. Like there's a pool of likes and they all get distributed voice tokens equally based on whatever that pool size is. So the more likes your post gets, the more pay you get as a content producer from the inflationary pool. And that's separate from the UBI and everything else. And then the voice tokens, like you said, it allows you to get attention and bring it to the top. And then like Pete added to that, if you're at the top, that means you have a better chance of getting more likes. So then even if you don't get outbid, because that's the cool part about it, is with the Pixel Master element, it rewards people who so if you're like that guy who follows like an indie band before they get big and they get mainstream, if you find a post on social media before it gets big, if you get outbid, if you voice a post, Rob makes a post and I voice it so it goes to the top. Thanks, Rob. And then someone outvoices me, then I get paid all of my original money, all of my original tokens I spent to voice it, plus some profit. And then some of the tokens get burned also. So the more people are spending these voice tokens, the more that is getting burned every single day. So we don't know the exact token economics of it, but it could, depending on how these tokens are used and the velocity of them, if these tokens have a high enough velocity, which is how many times a token is reused and turned over in a given time frame, then it could possibly be deflationary.
So I think
to me,
that
was the thing that was the lost on the most people is things. It's not just inflationary; is there will be the burning involved. So yeah, they completely agree.
So we've talked a lot about this. We've been going for almost 80 minutes now. So I think that's probably a good place to stop. Does anybody have anything else, any quick comments that they want to add about B1June? Obviously, as we learn more, as we find out what all this is, we'll keep you updated here on Everything EOS channel. So be sure to subscribe. But guys, any last things from you?
It was emphasized that this will be built with community feedback. When the demo was showed to me, it was emphasized that the community will be listened to. And you guys are talking about voice. If you have an idea for a feature, or if you have some objection to a design take, voice it. Voice your idea. If you remember back to Facebook early days, even Twitter early days, these social networks evolved and they became much different than they were based on user feedback, based on experience. If there's something you don't like about it, say so. And my bet is you'll be heard.
Absolutely. And I just dropped a link to the community voice Telegram chat, t.me/EOS voice, into the chat here on YouTube. So check that out if you want to drop in some comments. Dan was actually in there answering questions as well. So I think that's a good place to stop. Mark, we won't make you do our outro again if you don't want to.
No, I was going to say, I was prepared. I was ready this time.
All right, go ahead. You start it. We'll go Zach, Pete, Evan, and then I'll end it and we'll do a big go EOS.
All right, signing off. I'm Zack Gall.
I'm Mark Woods.
I'm Evan Schindler.
I'm Rob Finch. And this is Everything EOS. And on 3, go EOS!
Go EOS.
Oh man, that was terrible.
That's all right.
Rob, you didn't count.
Signing off.
Leave a go EOS in the chat. Smash the thumbs up. Thanks for tuning in.